This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So in the studio with us today is Ryan Rosas, and most people don't know this, but you're actually, so when I tell people that Val and I moved here and we didn't know anybody, technically that's right. Technically, maybe that's not entirely the truth, because
you sound like a presidential candidate.
Yeah. Hey, maybe Johnny for office.
Debate, yeah.
Johnny for office. But the reason why I say technically is because Valerie and I, before we moved here, before we were actually like living here, we went through 2 weeks of onboarding in Irvine at our previous brokerage where we met you.
Right.
And then after that 2 weeks, we moved up here. And so technically we knew you from Irvine.
Right.
But
just barely.
But just barely by 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you were one of the first people that we met when we moved up here. I've known you now, what was that, January of 2018?
Yeah, I think it was 2018.
Or December of 2018, something like that?
So maybe December 2017. I think it was, something like that.
Yeah. So known you a long time. And one of our, Valerie, my dearest friends up here in California, and or in Northern California. And what I really appreciate about working with Ryan is his knowledge and his experience. Because we were always asking you questions when we were at the previous brokerage, good old Purple Bricks. And we were always asking you questions, and you were always there to support us. But now now you're with eXp as the designated managing broker for Northern California. So, you've gone on to bigger and better things than slinging houses with Valerie and I.
Right.
And we still rely on you for that information. So when it comes to this whole situation with NAR and the lawsuits and the changes, what's the easiest way to explain what's taking place? Because the news likes to terrify rather than clarify, and there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, the premise of the settlement between the plaintiffs and NAR is that cooperating broker compensation, which is broker to broker, right? It's saying that I, as the listing brokerage, am collecting X amount, whatever that amount is, and I'm going to share a portion of my piece of that with whoever brings the buyer. That part actually hasn't been eliminated. What's been eliminated is the advertisement of that sharing through the MLS, which is a tool that nearly every agent in this country uses. If you don't, you're at a huge disadvantage. And so it impacts us a lot because it is such a prominent tool in our business that we can no longer share what that compensation is.
Got it. And so basically that field that was on the MLS, it was not client-facing, but agents could see it. That field has now been removed.
Right.
And that field was essentially, up until August 17th, is what guaranteed what an agent would get paid when they brought a buyer to a deal.
That's right.
And so now with that field being gone, now agents have to disclose in writing, hey, this is what compensation looks like.
Correct, yes.
So what I found interesting about the documentation that came out after this, and you've said this, and I'll just throw it out there, in case anybody needs the disclaimer, things are still changing.
Yeah, I mean, things are changing. I mean, I was telling you this earlier today that, I've been to your team meetings. I've been to many other team meetings around the last few months.
But ours is the best, right?
Yours is obviously the best, yeah. And I even remember saying in the last team meeting, I probably went to your last team meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago or so, and I was saying, I'm giving you information today that is different than the one that I came to last month or the month before, because it's constantly changing. And we as a business, as eXp, as a brokerage, are pivoting to support our agents in the best possible manner. And as we get new information or understand this better, we're shifting what we're telling you a little bit so that you have the most fresh information on it.
Mm-hmm. And so when agents are now, this came out and agents are now saying, hey, you have to sign this contract.
Right.
It's a scary thing for buyers. They're like, why am I going to be locked in with you on this contract? But the reality is that that air quotes contract is non-binding. Like it defaults to non-binding. Is that correct?
Not non-exclusive.
Non-exclusive.
Yeah, non-exclusive. And I think the biggest thing is it's a mental block.
Yep.
Right? Because as agents and as buyers, a buyer-broker agreement has existed in California. There's actually a lot of states that it didn't exist at all.
That's crazy.
That's
to me.
part of the lawsuit as well.
Yeah. But, if other states were doing what California was doing, there probably wouldn't have been an issue.
But even here in California, we've had the existence of a buyer-broker agreement, but it was just not utilized for the most part by most agents. And so agents in general, over decades now, have gotten really bad about having a conversation with buyers about what compensation looks like and the services that I'm providing to you and how I get paid for those services. Yeah. Even prior to this lawsuit, when it was being offered as a compensation through marketing in the MLS, our agents in general weren't having those conversations with buyers. And buyers, as a result of years and years and years of not getting those conversations, I mean, I could be a very savvy real estate, buyer and seller, and I haven't had that conversation in years with an agent at all. And so I'm all of a sudden, Johnny's putting this buyer broker agreement in front of me, and I'm like, what?
Where'd this come from? Why? What changed?
What changed?
I'm not signing that.
Right. And it's like I'm obligated to pay you. I've never had to do that, right? And so, the piece of advice that I give is that our agents, any agents, actually not just our agents, any agents, they've got to get darn good about having that compensation conversation with a buyer and explaining to them how it works. Yes, this is a contract. You're engaging me for my services, just like if you were to engage an attorney. I always give that analogy, right? Yeah. Just that attorney doesn't work for free, right? They're not getting payment from the other side.
Speaking of attorneys, though, they charge a retainer. Like before, win or lose, they're getting paid.
They're getting paid.
You only owe me money if you get what you want.
Yeah, but in California, we as real estate licensees cannot charge retainers. It's illegal.
I know.
So
So I'm just saying, like we're better than attorneys. we're it's a better situation.
Yeah. But so what happens is that now, that client is saying, well, where is this coming from all of a sudden? Why is this in front of me? And we just have to get really good about explaining what our value proposition is, that there's a cost for our service. And by the way, even though there's a cost for our service and there's this contract between me and you, I'm going to work my tail off to get somebody else to cover that cost for you. Mm-hmm. So, and there's nothing that prohibits the seller from paying the buyer broker. Even this lawsuit, there's nothing that prohibits it. The prohibition is the advertisement of a certain cooperating broker compensation.
Because it was considered price fixing, or what?
Yeah, that's the premise of the Department of Justice, is they're saying it's price fixing, right? And that because real estate commissions have averaged the same amount for a significant period of time. And
I noticed you didn't say the number.
Yeah, so they've averaged a certain particular amount. And the other thing that the
6 bananas
the DOJ was saying is that, hey, listen, not only have they averaged that, but the seller wasn't actually being given the opportunity to choose what to share of that. So whether it's 6 bananas, let's just use as an example, it's 6%, right? That the seller is willing to pay the listing brokerage. The listing agent was then predetermining what they were willing to share with whoever brought the agent. And a part of the premise of the lawsuit is, well, that's not your decision, agent. That's the seller's decision.
But in California, though, it was broken out. Like I remember going, this is what you pay. This is the total fee, and this is what we recommend you offer out to the buyers.
And you have to remember, this lawsuit, this settlement is on a national level, right? And we here in California and our forums had a really great breakdown of what a lot of that stuff is. But there's a lot of states that it didn't exist at all, right? Yeah.
So, yay, California. We were doing our forms right.
Yeah.
But then this whole conversation about compensation, now we've been talking about the buyers and how, yes, the seller can still pay the buyer's fee. And, there's ways that we can build this in. We at the Made for More team actually have some strategies. So you as a buyer necessarily don't have to pay it or feel it or really use that as a barrier between you and the home of your dreams. But there's now the agent side where there's been a lot of miscommunication, a lot of confusion around EXP as a company and what they're like they're not offering buyer agent compensation, which is technically correct, but the way it's received is 100% incorrect. So can you expound a little on that?
Yeah. And we have a fantastic CEO at the helm of our company.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Shout out Leo Preha.
Man, fantastic CEO. And he understands the position we're in as a business, and he wants us to spearhead changes to help adhere to the settlement and the different changes that are inevitably going to come into our industry. And so what we as a business, as a brokerage, have decided is
a global, national brokerage.
Correct. Not just California, right? Is we've said, hey, listen, broker to broker compensation. I'll go back to that example I had just a moment ago. The listing agent, traditional broker compensation, the listing agent is going to say, I'm charging you 5% out of that. And so that 5% is actually payable all to the listing brokerage.
Yep. Originally.
Right. And then I'm going to slice a piece of that off, 3%, 2%, 2.5%, whatever it may be, and share it with whoever brings the buyer. So we as a company have said, we're just going to charge you for our service. Right. So I'm representing you as a seller. My cost, the cost for my service is X. 2%, 10%, 1%, whatever it may be, whatever is negotiated between the listing agent and the seller, right?
Yeah.
What we're not doing is pre-authorizing an additional percent to be shared with whoever brings the buyer. We're still encouraging our agents to have conversations with the seller to say, hey, listen, inevitably a buyer's broker is going to ask in the negotiations with their buyer for you to pay for that service. I always give the analogy of, let's say you go into a listing appointment and the seller, the first thing he says is, hey, listen, my roof's been leaking. It's horrible. It's a horrible roof. I know it's bad. I don't have the money to pay for it. But I have equity in the house. And so when we sell, I'm willing to give a credit to have the roof repaired or replaced or whatever it may be. Yeah. The conversation's no different than that. You go in and you say, hey, listen, okay, just like you're willing to negotiate that credit, you should, I encourage you to be willing to negotiate the payment of a buyer broker compensation upon acceptable terms in an offer. Yep. So we're not going to pre-authorize it. We're not going to say that we're slicing a piece off and we're guaranteeing the payment. That's what EXP is doing. We're not standing in the way of a seller negotiating that and being able to provide that. Absolutely not. We're just saying we're not collecting it up front and providing it directly to the buyer broker. We're wanting the decision maker, the seller, to determine what's in their interest.
And really, that's the way it should have always been.
Absolutely.
I think it was ridiculous that we were collecting all the fees and then dispersing it. And so that makes sense. Shout out to Leo Preal for leading the change. Because now you're seeing a lot of other brokerages go, oh, that makes sense. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is on the flip side to that, there's a lot of brokerages that we're seeing that don't do that. So if you are here in the state of California, you're a real estate agent, you know that we used to have a form called the Cooperating Broker Compensation Agreement, which was a form that allowed us to modify, confirm, whatever that cooperating broker compensation. That form is gone. Our association has removed it from the forms library. But what we have seen is a significant amount of other brokerages creating that form. And they're saying, okay, well, we are offering broker-to-broker compensation, right? Which, again, there's nothing that prohibits that. We as a company said that we just aren't going to pre-authorize it, right? Yeah. But they're pre-authorizing it, and they created their own form to do that. And we're telling a lot of our agents come in and say, hey, can we get these signed? Is this against the rules? And it's like, no, that's their decision. If the listing brokerage on the other side is making that call, that's their decision to make.
Got it.
We're not going to stand in the way.
So to put a bow on this, all that's changed is we're not allowed to advertise in the MLS what the buyer's agent is going to be offered when they bring a buyer to that property. That's basically all that it is. And so now, as an agent, it's your responsibility to have this conversation up front with your client and just say, hey, this is what the fees typically look like. We're disclosing everything to you. I'm going to do my best to earn your business and find you that house. And then when we do find you that house, then at that point, only after you get what you want, are you going to then compensate me for the countless hours I've spent working with you?
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing, in light of even the broker-to-broker compensation and the MLS going away and all that, the MLS advertising going away, is that sellers are absolutely still willing to compensate buyer brokers directly and negotiate that into the offer. We have seen very little resistance to that.
Yeah, it's like, I think the most recent stat I saw was 97%.
Yeah, it's a huge number.
It's a huge number. And here's why. Sellers may be thinking, well, why do I have to do that? I don't want to have to pay a buyer's agent. Okay, well, I encourage you, especially here in like the Sacramento region, there's a lot of new construction.
Yeah.
Take an afternoon off, take a Saturday, go down and walk a new construction home. You're going to see two things. You're going to see that the models are staged, and you're going to see that they are offering buyer agent compensation. If staging a house and offering buyer agent compensation did not add to their bottom line, do you think the builders would be doing that?
Not just that, but they're typically offering the buyers huge incentives as well. Thousands and thousands of dollars. So you make a really valid point. They're in a business. They're in a big business. Yeah. If their bottom line didn't have the profit level, they would not be offering that.
Correct. Yeah. Great point. Mm-hmm. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. Yep. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Just do the right thing, right? Make smart decisions.
Do the right thing. And if you have any questions, when in doubt, contact Ryan Rosas.
That's right.
Thanks so much, man.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, it is never too early to start planning for your retirement because when you get there, you want to just be able to enjoy yourself. Kathleen and Phil did that, but part of their plan to retire out of state was selling their home and, of course, getting the most that you could possibly get. So, of course, they called Johnny Jennings and his Made for More team. They were not only able to sell their home in just 6 days, but he earned them a record price for their neighborhood, which is pretty impressive.
Maybe that's why they were voted the #1 team in Roseville for the past 3 years, or why they have almost 800 neighborhood 5-star Google reviews. They've got a full staff dedicated to making your home selling process the easiest and most efficient it can be. They sell homes 27% faster and for a 3% higher purchase price than everyone else in town. So expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty, brokered by EXP. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 581837.